The text arrived 3 days before Thanksgiving, lighting up my phone at 6 in the morning with a brutality only my mother could manage. "You are banned. Idiot. Do not show up." It landed like a physical slap, stinging worse because just 12 hours ago, I had paid for half the groceries so everyone could have a nice holiday. I sat up in the gray morning light, staring at the screen, and felt something inside me finally snap clean. The notification light on my phone pulsed with a relentless, toxic green rhythm against the darkness of my bedroom. It was 6 in the morning on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, a time when the world outside my window in Fairmont Ridge, Illinois, was still steeped in the heavy, slate-gray quiet of late autumn. I rolled over, the sheets tangling around my legs, and reached for the device with the groggy assumption that it was a work email or perhaps a reminder about the dentist. It was neither. It was a group text from my mother, Marlene Brooks. "You are banned, idiot. Don't show up." The words sat there on the screen, stark and glowing. I blinked, trying to make the sentence rearrange itself into something that made sense, something that sounded like a joke or a mistake, but the sender was definitely Marlene, and the tone was unmistakably hers. It landed like a physical slap, the kind that stings the skin and leaves your ears ringing. I stared at the timestamp. She had sent it at 5:45 in the morning. She had woken up angry, or perhaps she had never gone to sleep at all, stewing in some perceived slight until she felt the need to lash out. The cruelty of it was precise. It was surgical. Just 12 hours ago, I had confirmed the delivery of $200 worth of groceries to her doorstep. I had paid for the turkey, the artisanal stuffing mix she claimed was the only kind she could eat, the cranberry sauce, and 3 pies. I had sent a confirmation text that said, "Groceries arriving tomorrow so everyone can have a nice holiday." She had hearted that message, and now I was banned. I sat up, pulling the duvet around my shoulders. The air in my apartment was chilly, the radiator clanking as it tried to wake up along with me. I read the text again. Idiot. The word was a hook, dragging up 33 years of history. It was her favorite shorthand for any time I disagreed with her, any time I had a boundary, or any time I failed to read her mind fast enough. I did not reply immediately. I had learned, over years of therapy and financial analysis, that reacting to Marlene was like feeding oxygen to a grease fire. Instead, I got out of bed. I walked to the kitchen, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors I paid for with a job I worked 60 hours a week to keep. I started the coffee maker. I listened to the gurgle of the water and the hiss of the steam. I needed the routine. I needed the concrete reality of physics and chemistry before I could deal with the abstract chaos of my family. I sat at my small, round kitchen table with my coffee and my phone. The morning light was beginning to bruise the sky purple and gray. I unlocked my phone, but I did not open the messaging app. I opened my bank application. For years, I had treated my finances like a dam holding back a flood. I was a financial analyst at Larkin Sloan. I managed portfolios worth millions. I understood risk, leverage, and compound interest, but when it came to my family, I operated on a system of emotional hush money. I paid so they would be okay. I paid so they would be happy. I paid so that, maybe, if I was useful enough, I would be safe from the volatility that defined my childhood. I scrolled through the transaction history. It was a map of my own exploitation, laid out in clean, sans serif font. There was the autopay for Marlene's phone plan, $140 a month. She insisted on the unlimited data plan because she liked to watch videos on Facebook, even though she had Wi-Fi at home. When I had suggested a cheaper plan last year, she had cried and told me I was trying to cut her off from the world. There was the insurance for my stepfather's truck, Glenn Harker, $180. He had a couple of tickets on his record, and his rates were high. I had started paying it 3 years ago when he was between jobs. A temporary measure that had quietly calcified into a permanent entitlement. I scrolled further down. The storage unit for my brother, Trent, $85 a month. Trent was 29 years old, but he lived his life in a series of panicked starts and stops. The storage unit held the remnants of a failed DJ career, some furniture from an apartment he had been evicted from, and boxes of things he swore he was going to sell on eBay. He never sold them. I paid the rent on the unit because, if I stopped, they would auction off his things, and Marlene would scream that I allowed my brother to lose his history. And then there were the utilities for Marlene's house: gas, electric, water. Temporary, she had said last winter. Just until Glenn gets his settlement. Glenn never got settlements. He only got into minor accidents that resulted in higher premiums. I looked at the total for the month so far. It was staggering. I remembered the pattern clearly. It was a cycle as predictable as the tides. Whenever I questioned the money, whenever I asked Glenn when he might be able to take over the insurance again, or asked Trent if he really needed the 10x10 unit, Marlene would turn it into a moral failing on my part. "You are stingy," she would say, her voice dropping to a register of profound disappointment. "You act like you are better than us just because you went to college. You sit in that high-rise office and forget where you came from. After all I did for you, after all the sacrifices I made so you could have that fancy life." It was a brilliant strategy. It bypassed logic and went straight for the shame reflex. It made me feel like the villain for asking why a grown man needed me to pay for his truck insurance. My shame reflex would kick in, a hot flush up my neck, and I would apologize. I would pay the bill. I would apologize for having the money to pay the bill. But this morning, as I stared at the text, "You are banned, idiot," the shame did not come, or rather, it started to rise, familiar and acrid, and then it just stopped. It hit a wall. I was tired. I was bone deep, soul-heavy tired of auditioning for love. I was 33 years old. I had a 401k. I had a reputation for ruthless efficiency at work. And yet, I was still trying to buy a seat at a Thanksgiving table where I was apparently banned. I put my coffee cup down. I went to the drawer where I kept my notepad and a pen. I sat back down and wrote a header at the top of the page. What I pay for. I started listing them out, physically writing them down to give them weight. Marlene phone, 140. Glenn truck, insurance, 180. Trent storage, 85. Mom utilities, AVG, 250. Mom streaming bundle, 65. Trent emergency cash, last month, 300. Groceries for Thanksgiving, 212. I stared at the numbers. Over $1,000 a month. That was a mortgage payment in some parts of the state. That was a vacation I never took. That was my emergency fund. I went back to the bank app to make sure I hadn't missed anything. I scrolled back through October, then September. My eyes caught a transaction I did not recognize. It was a recurring draft, set up 6 months ago, for $50 a month. The recipient was listed as Harvest Bridge Outreach. I frowned. I donated to charity, certainly. I supported the local animal shelter and the library fund, but I did not recognize Harvest Bridge Outreach. I tapped on the transaction details. It was an automatic draft authorized via routing number, labeled Charitable Contribution. I tried to remember if Marlene had asked me to donate to something. She was always involved in various church groups and community initiatives, usually ones that involved a lot of meetings and very little actual paperwork. Had I signed something at Easter? Had I agreed to a small monthly support while distracted? It was possible. Marlene often shoved flyers in my face while I was cooking or cleaning for her, asking for just a little help for the cause. $50 was not a fortune, but combined with the ban, it felt invasive. It felt like a leak in the hull of a ship I was barely keeping afloat. I needed to understand the ban. If I was paying for the food they were going to eat, why was I being told to stay away? I exited the banking app and pulled up my contacts. I called Trent. He answered on the second ring, which meant he was awake and holding his phone. "Viv?" His voice was tight, hushed. He sounded like he was hiding in a closet. "Trent," I said, keeping my voice level. "I got a text from Mom. She says I am banned." "Yeah," Trent breathed out. "Yeah, I know. Look, just do not come, okay? She is on a tear." "Why?" I asked. I bought the turkey. Trent, I bought the pies. Why am I banned? It is not about the turkey, he said. She is stressed. Glenn said something about your job, and then she went off about how you think you run everything just because you pay a few bills. I pay all the bills. Trent, I said, and I do not think I run everything. I just want to know why I am being told not to show up to a family dinner I financed. I do not want drama, Viv, he said, and I could hear the anxiety ratcheting up in his voice. Please, just let her cool off. If you come, it is going to be World War III. She is screaming about respect. Respect, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. Trent, does she know I can see the transaction history? Does she know I can see the utilities and the phone bill? Vivian, stop, he hissed. Do not bring up the money. That is exactly why she is mad. You always hold it over us. I am not holding it over you, I said, gripping the phone tighter. I am paying it. There is a difference. Just stay home, he begged. Seriously, just do not mess up Mom's plan. I froze. What plan? The line went silent for a second too long. Trent, I said, sharper this time. What plan? Nothing, he stammered. Just her plan for the holiday. She wants it perfect. She has people coming, important people from the church or something. She just wants it to look right. And you know how you ask questions. You make faces. I make faces, I said flatly. Just stay away, he said. For me, please. He hung up. I stared at the phone. Do not mess up Mom's plan. The phrase stuck in my mind like a burr caught in wool. Marlene's plans were usually chaotic, emotional whirlwinds. They rarely required my absence. Usually, they required my presence as a prop, a fixer, or a punching bag. If she wanted me gone, it meant my presence was a risk to whatever narrative she was trying to spin. I looked at the Harvest Bridge outreach line item on my notepad again. I decided to go to the source. I dialed Marlene's number. It rang once, twice, then it went to voicemail. I did not leave a message. I knew she was looking at the phone. 3 seconds later, a text appeared. Do not call me. You embarrass me. I stared at the screen. The kitchen seemed to drop 5 degrees in temperature. You embarrass me. It was not, I am angry at you. It was not, you hurt my feelings. It was, you embarrass me. I thought about the years of covering for them. I thought about the time Glenn's truck was repossessed, and I paid the fees to get it back so the neighbors wouldn't see. I thought about the time Trent got arrested for public intoxication, and I paid the bail and the lawyer so it wouldn't go on his permanent record. I thought about the Thanksgiving groceries sitting in her refrigerator right now, paid for with money I earned by being competent, reliable, and invisible. I embarrassed her? No, I exposed her. My existence, my stability, was a mirror she did not want to look into, and if she had important people coming, she didn't want the daughter who paid the bills sitting there, acting as living proof that Marlene and Glenn were not the self-sufficient, successful patriarch and matriarch they pretended to be. This wasn't about Thanksgiving. This was about control. She wanted my money, but she wanted to erase the source of it. She wanted the turkey without the donor. Something inside my chest, a tight knot of obligation that had been pulled taut for decades, suddenly unspooled. It didn't snap with a bang. It just went slack. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. Okay. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, illuminating the list of what I pay for. I logged into the Verizon account first. I had the admin password because I was the one who set it up when they couldn't figure out the family plan options. I navigated to the billing section. I saw my credit card listed as the primary payment method. My hand hovered over the trackpad. A wave of nausea rolled over me, the ingrained fear of the fallout. Marlene would lose her mind. She would lose her ability to scroll Facebook. She would have to actually pay a bill. You are banned, idiot, I whispered. I clicked, remove payment method. The site asked me to confirm. I clicked yes. Next, the streaming bundle, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus. I changed the password first, logging out all devices. Then I went to the account settings and canceled the subscription entirely. If they wanted to watch movies on Thanksgiving, they could watch cable. I went to the insurance website. This one was trickier. I couldn't just cancel it immediately without potentially causing legal issues for Glenn if he was driving, but I could remove my card from the autopay. I changed the billing setting to paper bill and removed my Visa. I sent a request to the agent. Please do not renew this policy automatically. The policyholder will need to provide new payment information. Then, the storage unit. I logged into the portal. I removed my card. I sent a message through the contact form. Please note that Vivian Brooks is no longer the financial guarantor for Unit 404. Please contact the tenant, Trent Brooks, for all future payments. I felt lightheaded. My heart was hammering against my ribs. A frantic bird trapped in a cage. This was nuclear. This was the thing I had threatened in my head 1,000 times but never had the courage to do. Finally, the utilities. I couldn't turn off the power. That was illegal, or at least dangerous in November. But I could certainly stop paying for it. I removed my bank account from the autopay. I sat back, my hands trembling. It was done. The digital tethers were severed. I picked up my phone. I needed to send one message. It needed to be polite. It needed to be final. It needed to be evidence. I typed, I will not be attending. I am also no longer covering household bills or third-party payments effective immediately. I hope Thanksgiving is peaceful. I pressed send. I put the phone down on the table and watched it. It took less than 2 minutes. The phone buzzed. Marlene. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything I have done for you, you are trying to ruin this family. Put the card back on the phone plan now. Buzz. Marlene. Do not ignore me. You think you are so smart? You are nothing without us. You have no one. You are going to die alone because you are selfish. Buzz. Trent. Viv. What the hell? I just got an email from the storage place. Dude, please. I do not have the money for this right now. You cannot just do this. Buzz. Glenn. Your mother is crying. I hope you are happy. You are destroying her health. I watched the messages roll in like storm waves crashing against a seawall. They were loud. They were violent. But they could not touch me. I was safe in my apartment, in the silence I paid for. Then, a different notification. A single message from my Aunt Elise, Marlene's younger sister. Elise rarely texted. She stayed on the periphery of the family drama, observing but rarely intervening. Be careful. You do not know what she has used your name for. I stared at Elise's message. The rage from the others I expected. The panic from Trent I expected. But this was a warning. What she has used your name for. A cold prickle of dread started at the base of my neck. I looked at the notepad. Harvest Bridge Outreach. $50. Why would my name be used? I was just the wallet. I was just the ATM. I picked up the laptop again. It was evening now, the day having passed in a blur of anxiety and adrenaline. I had not gone to work. I had called in sick, unable to face spreadsheets while my personal life was imploding. Just to reassure myself, I said aloud. I navigated to a credit monitoring site. I had an account, though I hadn't checked it in 6 months because my credit was always pristine, 800 plus. I prided myself on it. I logged in. The dashboard loaded. My score had dropped. It wasn't a catastrophic drop, maybe 30 points. But it was a drop. I clicked on Alerts. There was a notification from 3 weeks ago. New account opened. I clicked it, my breath hitching in my throat. It was an installment loan. $15,000. The lender was Granite Harbor Cooperative. I had never heard of Granite Harbor Cooperative. I had never applied for a loan of $15,000. I didn't need a loan. I clicked for more details. The account was open and current, but the first payment was due in December. I felt the room spin. The Harvest Bridge outreach charge was small potatoes. This was a loan, a significant one. I looked at the text from Elise again. You do not know what she has used your name for. And then I looked at the text from Marlene. You are banned. The ban wasn't just about control. It wasn't just about her being angry or embarrassed. It was a preemptive strike. If I came to Thanksgiving, I might talk to people. I might hear things. I might see paperwork lying around. She didn't ban me because she hated me. She banned me because she was hiding a body, and the body was my credit score. I sat in the dark kitchen, the light of the laptop illuminating my face, and felt the last remnants of daughterly guilt evaporate. In its place, something cold and hard settled in my gut. It was the feeling of a financial analyst looking at a fraudulent balance sheet and realizing the numbers didn't lie. Even if the people did, I wasn't just a banned daughter anymore. I was a victim, and they had no idea that by cutting me off, they had just freed me to fight back. Wednesday morning broke with a sky the color of a fresh bruise, purples and sickly yellows bleeding into the gray horizon of Fairmont Ridge. I had slept for perhaps 2 hours, a fitful, shallow rest, interrupted by dreams where I was trying to run through waist-deep water while my mother stood on the shore, holding my wallet and laughing. I was awake before the alarm. I sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where I had severed my financial ties the night before, and dialed the number for Granite Harbor Cooperative. The hold music was a tinny, distorted loop of classical piano that sounded like it was being played underwater. I waited for 20 minutes, my hand gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Finally, a human voice cut through the static. Granite Harbor, this is Brenda. How can I help you? I am calling about a loan on my credit report, I said, my voice sounding calm, almost robotic. It was the voice I used when a client's portfolio took a hit. I did not open this account. I need details. Brenda went through the verification process. Name, social security number, date of birth. Every correct answer felt like a betrayal, confirming that they had the right Vivian Brooks, just the wrong reality. Okay, Ms. Brooks, Brenda said, the clicking of her keyboard audible in the background. I see the account here. It is an installment loan for $15,000, opened on November 2nd. Where was it opened? I asked. It looks like it was originated at our branch in Willow Crossing, Indiana, she said. My stomach dropped. Willow Crossing. That was 2 states away. It was a 3-hour drive from where my mother lived, and 4 hours from me. I have never been to Willow Crossing, Indiana, I said, and I certainly was not there on November 2nd. I was at work. Well, the paperwork was signed in person, Brenda said, her tone shifting slightly, becoming more guarded. We have a copy of the driver's license on file. What is the address on the account? I asked. She read off an address. It was a string of numbers and a street name I did not recognize. 112 Sycamore Lane, Apartment B, Willow Crossing, Indiana. That is not my address, I said. I live in Illinois. I have lived in Illinois for 10 years. Okay, Brenda said, dragging the word out. You can file a fraud affidavit, but since the ID matches and the signature matches, it is going to be an investigation. We cannot just close it. Send me the forms, I said, and freeze the account. I hung up and stared at the wall. Willow Crossing. Why there? It seemed random, desperate. Or maybe it was calculated. A small credit union in a small town. Perhaps less scrutiny than a major bank in Chicago. I showered and dressed for work, putting on my gray blazer and black slacks. This was my armor. When I wore these clothes, I was Vivian Brooks, senior analyst. I was the woman who caught errors in spreadsheets and projected fiscal quarters with terrifying accuracy. I was not the daughter who had just been banned from Thanksgiving. I drove to Lark and Sloan Financial. The commute was a blur of brake lights and gray asphalt. When I walked into the lobby, the air conditioning hit me, crisp and scented with lemon polish. I swiped my badge. I smiled at the receptionist. I took the elevator to the 14th floor, but when I sat at my desk, surrounded by the familiar hum of servers and the low murmur of colleagues discussing market trends, I could not focus. The numbers on my screen swam. I looked at a spreadsheet analyzing a merger for a manufacturing client, but all I could see was $15,000. I realized then, with a jolt that made me nauseous, that I had built my entire career on cleaning up other people's messes. That was my job. I organized chaos. I found the missing variable. I balanced the unbalanceable. And while I had been doing that for strangers and corporations, I had allowed my own life to become a crime scene. I had ignored the red flags in my own family because it was easier to pay the bill than to prosecute the thief. I stood up. I could not be here. Not today. I told my manager I had a family emergency. It was the truth, though not the kind he would understand. I got back in my car and drove. I did not go home. I went to the Rivergate Mall, or rather, the coffee shop across the street from it. I knew my brother Trent would be near there. He worked shifts at a sporting goods store in the mall, and his lunch break was usually around 1 in the afternoon. I texted him, "Meet me at the grind. Now, it is about the police." It was a bluff, mostly, but I knew the word police would bypass his avoidance protocols. He arrived 20 minutes later. He looked terrible. Trent was 29, but today he looked like a teenager who had been caught smoking behind the gym. He wore his store uniform, a blue polo shirt that was slightly too big, and his eyes were darting around the coffee shop as if looking for an exit. I didn't have a drink. I was sitting at a small table in the corner. My hands folded on the tabletop. "Viv," he said, sliding into the chair opposite me. "You cannot be here. Mom is tracking my location on Life 360. If she sees I am with you, she is going to lose it." "Let her lose it," I said. My voice was low, devoid of the warmth I usually reserved for him. "Trent, I know about the loan." He froze. The color drained from his face so fast it was frightening. He looked down at his hands, which were picking at a loose thread on his jeans. "I did not know it was a loan," he whispered. $15,000. "Trent," I said. "In my name, from a bank in Indiana. Did you drive her there?" He flinched. "She said it was just some paperwork for the house. She said she needed a cosigner for a refinancing thing because her credit was dinged from the medical bills. She said you would understand." "Did you sign my name?" I asked. "No." He looked up, eyes wide. "No, I swear. She signed your name. She practiced it for like an hour at the kitchen table. I signed as the witness." I closed my eyes. "You witnessed our mother forging my signature on a bank document. She said you always fix things." Trent's voice cracked, rising in pitch. A few people at nearby tables glanced over. He lowered his voice, leaning in. "Viv, you have to understand. She was screaming. She had been screaming for 3 days straight. She was throwing things. She said if she did not get this money, we were going to lose the house. She said you were too busy with your fancy job to care. So she had to take charge. She said you would pay it off and never even notice." "I noticed," I said. "I just wanted her to stop," Trent said. He looked pathetic, a grown man reduced to a terrified child by the mere memory of our mother's volume. "I just wanted peace, Viv." I looked at him. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to scream at him for selling me out for a quiet afternoon. But I couldn't. I saw him clearly. Maybe for the first time. He wasn't a villain. He wasn't a mastermind. He was collateral damage. He was a planet trapped in the gravity well of a dying star, being slowly ripped apart. Marlene had trained him to be helpless, to be complicit, just as she had trained me to be the fixer. "You witnessed a felony, Trent," I said. "That makes you an accomplice." He started to cry, silent tears tracking through the stubble on his cheeks. "What are you going to do?" "I am going to stop her," I said. "And you are going to help me, or you are going to go down with her." "I cannot," he whimpered. "She will kill me." "She is killing you already," I said. "She is just doing it slowly." I left him there, weeping into a paper napkin. I had another stop to make. My Aunt Elise lived in a small condo complex on the south side of town. It was modest, clean, and quiet. Everything Marlene's house was not. Elise was Marlene's younger sister. but they looked nothing alike. Elise was small, sharp-eyed, and wore her graying hair in a practical bob. She opened the door before I could knock. She must have seen my car. "Come in," she said. Her condo smelled of lavender and old paper. She made me tea, Earl Grey, and we sat in her living room. There were no pictures of Marlene on the walls. "You found something," Elise said. It wasn't a question. "A loan," I said. $15,000. And Trent witnessed it. Elise sighed, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of her lungs. She set her teacup down with a delicate clink. "I wondered when she would escalate to the banks," Elise said. "She burned through the family years ago." "You knew?" I asked, feeling a spike of betrayal. "I did not know about this specific loan," Elise said, "but I know the pattern. 10 years ago, before you got that big promotion, she came to me. She needed a car. She cried. She begged. She said she needed it to get to work, so she could support Trent. I co-signed." I waited. I knew the ending of this story, even if I had never heard it. "She made 3 payments," Elise said. "Then she stopped. They came after me. I paid off a $20,000 car note." Vivian. "It took me 5 years. I had to dip into my retirement." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because she told me that if I told you, she would never let me see you or Trent again," Elise said. "She uses family love as collateral. Vivian, that is her currency. She takes the things we value, loyalty, connection, peace, and she holds them hostage. And when we finally ask for repayment, or just for her to stop, she calls it betrayal." "She banned me from Thanksgiving," I said, "because you stopped being a resource and started being a liability." Elise said, "She does not want a daughter at the table. She wants a wallet, and if the wallet talks back, she throws it away." Elise reached out and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was dry and cool. "You have to be careful," she said. "The loan is bad, but if she is desperate enough to commit bank fraud, she is desperate enough to do worse. What else has she done?" "I do not know," I said, "but I am going to find out." I drove home as the sun began to set, casting long, menacing shadows across the road. My apartment felt different when I walked inside. It no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a bunker. I went to the mailbox in the lobby. I hadn't checked it in 2 days. It was stuffed with the usual junk: grocery flyers, credit card offers, and a few bills. I carried the stack upstairs and sorted it on the kitchen counter. Trash, trash, trash. Then I froze. There was a letter in a window envelope. The return address was a collections agency called Apex Recovery Services, but it was the addressee that made the blood drain from my face. Vivian Brooks, DBA, Harvest Bridge Outreach. DBA. Doing business as. I stared at the letters. I had never run a business. I had never registered a trade name. I was a W-2 employee. I paid my taxes. I did not have a DBA, and Harvest Bridge Outreach. That was the name on the bank transaction. The $50 donation. I tore the envelope open. "Dear Ms. Brooks, this notice is to inform you that your account for business supplies purchased from Office Depot is past due. The total amount owed is $2,430. Business supplies? I ran to my laptop. I needed to understand what Harvest Bridge Outreach was. I had assumed it was a charity she was donating to, but if I was doing business as this entity, that meant legally, I was the charity. I searched the Illinois Secretary of State's database. I typed in Harvest Bridge Outreach. No results. I tried Indiana. Bingo. Harvest Bridge Outreach. Registered agent, Vivian Brooks. The address for the registered agent was a post office box in Willow Crossing, Indiana. I clicked on the filing documents. They were digital scans. I saw my signature at the bottom of the incorporation papers. It was a good forgery, better than the one on my high school permission slips, but it had a slight tremor at the end of the S that I didn't have. I looked at the board of directors listed: Marlene Brooks, Sarah Jenkins, Linda Crowder. I knew those names. Sarah and Linda were women from Marlene's church group. They were the prayer warriors who came over for tea and nodded sympathetically when Marlene complained about her difficult life. Vivian Brooks was listed as treasurer. I sat back, my mind racing. She hadn't just stolen my money. She hadn't just taken out a loan. She had built a shell company using my identity. She was running a fake nonprofit, with me as the legal shield. Why? To launder money? To get grants? To solicit donations? Harvest Bridge Outreach, I whispered. It sounded so wholesome, so benevolent. I tried to find a website. There wasn't one, just a Facebook page. I clicked on it. It was filled with stock photos of happy families and vague posts about community empowerment. There was a Donate Now button. I clicked the button. It redirected to a PayPal account. I needed to dispute this. I needed to shut it down immediately. I went to the Secretary of State's portal to file a fraud claim, or at least to flag the entity. The site asked for verification to access the account management tools. Security question 1. What was the name of your first pet? I typed, Buster. That was our golden retriever when I was 7. Incorrect answer. I frowned. Maybe she used her pet? Fluffy. Incorrect answer. Security question 2. What is your mother's maiden name? I typed, Gallows. Incorrect answer. My breath hitched. She had changed the security questions. She had created a version of me that I couldn't access. She had built a parallel identity, using my name, my social security number, but locking me out with keys only she possessed. It was a violation so complete it felt physical. It was identity theft, yes, but it was also identity erasure. She had replaced the real Vivian, the one who remembered Buster and the name Gallows, with a puppet Vivian who existed solely to sign checks and absorb liability. My phone buzzed on the table. It made me jump. It was Marlene. Come to Thanksgiving and we will talk like adults. Bring your laptop. We need your help with a few things. I stared at the message. The audacity was breathtaking. Yesterday, I was banned. Today. Now that she likely sensed the walls closing in, maybe the bank had called her. Or maybe Trent had cracked and texted her. She was inviting me back. But not for turkey. Bring your laptop. She needed me to fix something. Maybe the loan had hit a snag. Maybe the charity needed a tax form filed. She was confident, so utterly confident, that I would comply. She believed that the ban had punished me enough, that I was desperate to be let back into the fold, and that I would do whatever technical wizardry she required just to be allowed to eat dry turkey and listen to Glenn complain about the government. She thought I was still the daughter who craved her approval. She didn't realize she was texting the treasurer of Harvest Bridge Outreach, who had just discovered she was the fall guy for a felony. My hands shook, not from fear, not anymore. They shook from the adrenaline of the hunt. I picked up the phone. I typed one line. I will not bring anything. I am handling this through proper channels. I hit send. The response was instantaneous, as if she had her thumb hovering over the glass. You ungrateful little... Then, a second message, an image. It was a screenshot. It was a draft of an email. The recipient line showed the general email address for the HR department at Lark & Sloan Financial. The subject line read, Concern regarding employee Vivian Brooks. The body of the email was visible in the preview. To whom it may concern, I am writing to you as a concerned board member of a local nonprofit. It has come to our attention that your employee, Vivian Brooks, has been mishandling funds intended for charitable use. We have records of her diverting donations. I stopped reading. The room went silent. She was threatening my job. She was threatening to burn down the one thing I had built for myself, the one place where I was respected and safe. She was willing to frame me for embezzlement from a fake charity she created, to keep me in line. Handling this through proper channels, I whispered, repeating my own text. She thought this was a checkmate. She thought the threat of professional ruin would force me back to the table, head bowed, laptop in hand. But she had miscalculated. She didn't understand that when you corner a financial analyst, you don't get submission, you get an audit, and this audit was going to be total. I did not reply to the screenshot. I placed the phone face down. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Consumer Rights Attorney Fairmont Ridge. The game had escalated. It wasn't a family squabble anymore. It was war, and I had the receipts. The office of Park and Lowry Legal was located in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a dentist's office, about 10 minutes from my apartment. It did not look like the kind of place where high-stakes corporate litigation happened. It looked like the kind of place where people went when they were desperate, broke, or both. The carpet was a sensible beige industrial loop, and the waiting room chairs were upholstered in a fading navy blue fabric that had seen better decades. I sat across from Nadia Park. She was younger than I expected, perhaps my age, with a sharp bob cut and glasses that magnified her intense, dark eyes. She did not offer me coffee or water. She just listened. I laid it all out, the text banning me, the discovery of the auto-pays I had been carrying, the phantom loan from Granite Harbor Cooperative, the Harvest Bridge outreach entity with my name on the board, the threat to email my employer. I spoke for 20 minutes without stopping, my voice flat and clinical, as if I were presenting a quarterly earnings report that just happened to be disastrous. When I finished, silence filled the small room. The hum of the photocopier in the back was the only sound. Nadia leaned back in her chair. She tapped a pen against her legal pad. "Ms. Brooks," she said, her voice dropping an octave, stripping away any professional pleasantries. "You are treating this like a misunderstanding. You are treating this like a family squabble that got out of hand." "It is my mother," I said. "The defense automatic. She has always been difficult with money. She gets desperate." Nadia shook her head. "This isn't just family drama. This is identity fraud. It is embezzlement. It is forgery. These are felonies, multiple felonies, across state lines." The words hung in the air. Identity fraud. I had known it, intellectually. I had seen the credit report, but hearing a stranger say it, a legal professional, made it real in a way that made my stomach turn over. "She is threatening to contact my employer," I said. "She sent me a draft." "That is extortion," Nadia said. "She is using the threat of reputational damage to coerce you into silence and compliance. It is textbook." "So what do I do?" I asked. "Do I sue her?" "We will get there," Nadia said. "But first, you have to stop the bleeding. You need to gather evidence, hard evidence, not just stories. I need paper trails." I spent the rest of that Wednesday doing exactly what she asked. It was a grim, mechanical process. I sat at my dining table, my laptop open, a printer I had dragged out of the closet humming beside me. I printed the screenshots of every autopay for the last 3 years. I highlighted the totals in yellow marker. Marlene's phone bill, $5,000, $40 over 3 years. Glenn's truck insurance, $6,000, $480. The storage unit, $3,000, $60. I printed the call logs showing the dates and times I had spoken to Trent, to Marlene. I printed the text message where she called me an idiot and banned me. I printed the thread about the email to HR. I printed the Harvest Bridge outreach filing from the Indiana Secretary of State. The process was clinical, but the effect was devastating. Every page I printed felt like I was shoveling dirt onto a coffin. I was grieving. I wasn't grieving the mother I had, because the mother I had was a woman who would forge my signature to get $15,000. I was grieving the mother I had kept hoping would appear. I had spent my entire adult life paying these bills as a form of prayer. I thought if I paid enough, if I fixed enough, if I was good enough, eventually the chaos would stop and she would just be a mother. She would ask me about my day and mean it. She would be proud of me without adding a caveat about how I owed her. The stack of papers on my table grew taller. It was a monument to my own delusion. She hadn't been borrowing money. She had been harvesting me. The next morning, Thursday, I went back to Nadia's office with a binder 3 inches thick. Nadia flipped through it, nodding. "This is good. This is actionable. Now, here is the hard part." She looked me in the eye. "You need to place fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus. You need to freeze your credit." And you need to file a police report. I flinched. A police report? Yes, Nadia said. Granite Harbor Cooperative will not discharge that debt without a police report. They need proof that you are treating this as a crime. If you do not file, you are essentially accepting the debt. I can't call the police on my mother, I whispered. The sentence came out before I could stop it. It was a reflex, installed in my operating system when I was 5 years old. What happens in this house stays in this house. Only monsters call the police on family. Nadia's expression softened, but her gaze didn't waver. Vivian, she said gently, family shouldn't make you choose between your future and their comfort. I looked at her. She chose to do this. Nadia continued. She chose to walk into a bank and sign your name. She chose to incorporate a fake charity. She made the choices. You are just reporting the facts of those choices. I left her office and drove to the Fairmont Ridge Police Department. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the steering wheel until my fingers ached. The station smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. I walked up to the front desk, a desk sergeant, a heavy-set man with graying hair and a name tag that read, Officer Miller. Looked up. Can I help you? I need to file a report, I said. My voice was thin. Identity theft. He slid a clipboard across the counter. Fill this out. We will need a statement. I filled it out. Name, address, suspect information. I paused at suspect name. My pen hovered. I wrote, Marlene Brooks. I wrote, Harvest Bridge Outreach. I handed the clipboard back. Officer Miller read it. He stopped when he got to the name. He looked up at me, his eyes narrowing slightly. Marlene Brooks, he said. Over on Elm Street? Yes, I said. He let out a short, sharp breath that wasn't quite a laugh, but wasn't sympathetic either. Yeah, okay. We know the name. We have had interactions, noise complaints, civil disputes with neighbors, that sort of thing. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and recognition. You are the daughter? Yes, I said. I felt nauseated. I am the daughter. And she used your name for a loan? He asked, glancing back at the paper. Yes. All right, he said. He stamped the form. We will generate a report number. A detective might reach out if they need more. But for identity theft, usually you just need the number for the banks. Here is your copy. He handed me a carbon copy of the sheet. Good luck, he said. Known parties are always tricky. Known parties. The phrase echoed in my head as I walked back to my car. My mother was a known party to the police. I had spent my life trying to project an image of perfect, boring respectability. The suit, the career, the credit score, to distance myself from the chaos of my upbringing. And here I was, standing in a police station parking lot, realizing that in this town, the name Brooks was already shorthand for trouble. I felt sick, but as I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the stamped police report, I also felt a strange, cold relief. Someone else had named it. Someone else saw her not as a martyr or a victim, but as a known party, a problem. It wasn't just in my head that night. My phone rang at 11:30. It was Trent. I answered. I didn't say hello. I just listened. I can't sleep, Trent said. He was crying. He sounded drunk, or maybe just exhausted beyond the point of reason. Viv, it is so bad. What is bad, Trent? I asked. I was sitting on my couch in the dark, the police report still on the coffee table. She has been borrowing from everyone, he sobbed. Not just the bank, Mrs. Gable next door. Mom borrowed $2,000 from her last month, said she needed it for a surgery copay. She didn't have surgery. Viv. She bought new furniture for the living room. Who else? I asked. Everyone, Trent said. The people at the church. She started this prayer circle thing, and then she hit them up for emergency funds. She tells them the house is in foreclosure. She tells them Glenn is sick. She tells them you are sick sometimes. Me? I asked. Yeah, he sniffled. She told Mrs. Higgins you were in rehab, and she needed money to pay for your treatment center. That is why she doesn't want you at Thanksgiving. Mrs. Higgins is coming. If she sees you sober and successful, the story falls apart. I closed my eyes. The Harvest Bridge outreach wasn't just a shell for loans. It was the culmination of a long con. Why, Trent? I asked. Where is the money going? She doesn't have a gambling problem. She doesn't do drugs. Where is it? I don't know, Trent said. It just disappears. She buys stuff. She buys affection. She throws parties. She wants to look like the lady of the manor. And then the bills come due, and she panics, and she borrows more to pay the interest on the last lie. She is a Ponzi scheme, I said. Our mother is a human Ponzi scheme. She promised it would stop, Trent said, his voice dropping to a whisper. She keeps talking about the Thanksgiving reset. She says after Thanksgiving, everything is going to be fixed. She has some big money coming in. That is why she needed the loan, to bridge the gap until the reset. There is no reset, Trent, I said gently. There is no big money. That is just what she tells herself so she can sleep at night. I know, he wept. I know. I hung up. The Thanksgiving reset. It sounded like a cult prophecy. I couldn't sleep. I went back to my laptop. I needed to know about the house. Trent had mentioned foreclosure. I pulled up the county property records. They were public domain. The house on Elm Street was listed under Marlene Brooks and Glenn Harker. But the history was a mess. Refinanced in 2018. Refinanced again in 2021. And then a lien, filed 6 months ago. A mechanic's lien for $45,000. The creditor was Foxvale Renovations. I frowned. They hadn't had any renovations done. The kitchen was still the same linoleum from the 90s. The roof was still patching. I searched for Foxvale Renovations. It was an LLC. I checked the address. It was a post office box in Willow Crossing, Indiana. The same post office box as Harvest Bridge Outreach. My blood ran cold. She had created a fake construction company. She had billed herself for renovations that never happened. And then she had placed a lien on her own house? Why? To strip the equity? No, that didn't make sense, unless she was using the lien to prevent other creditors from getting the house. If Foxvale Renovations held the primary claim, and Foxvale was secretly her, she could foreclose on herself, wipe out the junior debts, and keep the house under the corporate name. It was complex. It was devious. It was far too sophisticated for Marlene, or at least, the Marlene I thought I knew. Foxvale, I whispered. It sounded like a soap opera location. I needed to talk to someone who knew the history. I needed to talk to Elise again. I went to Elise's condo the next day during my lunch break. I didn't call first. She looked surprised to see me, standing in her doorway in my work clothes, grim-faced. Vivian? Did you know about Foxvale Renovations? I asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Elise's face crumpled. She sat down on her sofa as if her legs had suddenly given out. I saw mail, she whispered. Once, when I was watching the house while they went to Branson, I saw an invoice from Foxvale. I asked her about it. She said it was for tax purposes. Tax purposes? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. Elise, she is placing fake liens on the house. She is running a shell game with property law. Did you know? I suspected, Elise said, looking at her hands. I suspected she was moving money around in ways that weren't right. But Vivian, what was I supposed to do? Call the IRS? She is my sister. She is a criminal, I said. And she is dragging us all down with her. Trent is an accomplice. I am a victim of identity theft. And you are an enabler. Elise looked up, tears in her eyes. I didn't want to be the one who broke the family. Vivian, we have always just survived her. That is what we do. We survive Marlene. I am done surviving her, I said. I am going to stop her. She will destroy you, Elise said. She will burn everything down before she lets you win. She has already burned it down, I said. I am just sifting through the ashes. I left Elise crying on her sofa. Her shame was quiet, realistic. It wasn't the dramatic weeping of Marlene or the panicked sobbing of Trent. It was the heavy gray shame of a woman who had watched a train wreck in slow motion for 40 years and never pulled the emergency brake because she was afraid of the noise it would make. I returned to work. My desk felt like a foreign country. I was surrounded by people worried about quarterly projections and lunch orders. I was worried about prison time and liens. When I got home that evening, there was a certified letter in my mailbox. I signed for it. The return address was Granite Harbor Cooperative. I opened it in the hallway. Notice of delinquency. Dear Ms. Brooks, we have not received the initial payment for loan 88429, which was due on December 1st. Please remit the amount of $452 immediately to avoid default proceedings. Failure to pay may result in legal action, wage garnishment, and reporting to credit bureaus. It was starting. The machine was turning its gears toward me. Wage garnishment. If my wages were garnished, Larkin Sloan would know. Financial analysts cannot have wage garnishments. It is a firing offense. You cannot manage other people's money if you cannot manage your own. I stared at the letter. I had the money. I could pay the $452 right now. I could make the problem go away for a month. But that was the trap. That was exactly what Marlene counted on. She knew I would pay to save my skin. She knew I would cover the loan to protect my job. And once I made one payment, I accepted the debt. I validated the fraud. I walked into my apartment and pinned the letter to the wall above my desk, right next to the police report. No, I said. The next morning, Friday, was 1 week before Thanksgiving. I was at my desk at Larkin Sloan, trying to focus on a spreadsheet, when my manager, David, stopped by. Hey, Viv, he said, leaning against my cubicle wall. He held a coffee cup and looked uncomfortable. Got a second? Sure, I said, turning my chair. So, this is weird, he said, lowering his voice. Reception just got a call. Some woman asking if you manage the charitable donation funds for the firm. She said she needed to verify a transaction. My heart stopped. Then it started again, beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Did she give a name? I asked. No, David said. She hung up when the receptionist asked for details. But, is everything okay? You have been a little off this week. It was happening. Marlene was making the calls. She was planting the seeds of doubt. She was creating a narrative where I was the one stealing. I was the one moving money around. If I didn't get ahead of this, I would be defending myself against an investigation at work within days. I looked at David. I respected him. He was a good man. David, I said, I need to talk to HR, immediately, and I would like you to be there. David's eyebrows shot up. Okay, is it serious? It is criminal, I said. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in the office of the HR director, a woman named Susan Close. David sat next to me. I am currently the victim of identity theft, I said, my voice steady, though my hands were clasped tight in my lap to hide the tremors. A family member has used my personal information to take out loans and register fraudulent business entities. One of these entities is a fake nonprofit. I have reason to believe this person is attempting to damage my professional reputation by contacting the firm and implying I am involved in financial misconduct. I slid the police report across the desk. I slid the copy of the text message with the email draft. I slid the Harvest Bridge outreach filing. I have filed a police report. I continued. I have retained counsel. I have frozen my credit. I am disclosing this to you preemptively because I value my position here, and I want you to know that any allegations coming from outside sources are part of an extortion attempt. Susan read the documents. She looked up at me. There was no pity in her eyes, but there was respect. Thank you for bringing this to us. Vivian, she said, this is extensive. It is, I said. I am handling it. We will flag any external communications regarding you, Susan said, and we will note this in your file. As long as your work remains unaffected and there are no legal judgments against you that impact your licensure, your job is safe. Thank you, I said. I walked out of that meeting feeling lightheaded. It was humiliating to have to admit that my mother was a con artist. It was shaming to have to drag my personal nightmare into the sterile fluorescent light of my corporate office. But it was also powerful. I had taken the weapon out of Marlene's hand. She couldn't blackmail me if I had already confessed. I called Nadia from the parking lot. I told HR, I said. Good, Nadia said. That was brave. Now, we strike back. How? We send a formal cease and desist, Nadia said, to Marlene, to Harvest Bridge Outreach, to Foxvale Renovations, and we send a demand letter to the Indiana Secretary of State requesting the dissolution of the entity based on fraudulent formation. She will explode, I said. Let her, Nadia said. We are also going to demand a full accounting of all funds funneled through Harvest Bridge. We are going to ask for the receipts she promised the donors. She doesn't have receipts, I said. Exactly, Nadia said. Come by the office. The letters are ready. I went to the office at 5 o'clock. The letters were printed on thick, heavy bond paper. The letterhead was sharp and intimidating. Cease and desist. Unauthorized use of identity and fraudulent activity. I read through the legal jargon. It demanded that Marlene Brooks immediately stop using the name Vivian Brooks. It demanded she surrender all documents related to the fraudulent loans. It stated that we were prepared to pursue civil and criminal litigation. Sign here, Nadia said, handing me a pen. I looked at the signature line, Vivian Brooks. I thought about the signature Marlene had forged. I thought about the Vivian Brooks, who was the treasurer of a fake charity. I gripped the pen. Signing this felt like cutting a cord. Not an umbilical cord. That had been severed long ago. This was the cord to the life preserver I had been keeping inflated for them. If I signed this, I was popping the raft. I was letting them drown in the consequences of their own actions. Do it, I whispered. I signed my name. The ink was dark and permanent. We will send these certified mail, Nadia said. She will get them Monday or Tuesday, right before Thanksgiving. Perfect, I said. Just in time for the reset. I walked out into the cool evening air. The sun had set, and the streetlights were buzzing on. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was heavier than that. It was the feeling of gravity shifting. I wasn't the daughter anymore. I was the plaintiff. And for the first time in 33 years, I wasn't afraid of what was coming next. I was writing the script. The weekend bled into Monday with a shift in atmospheric pressure. The rage that had characterized Marlene's initial reaction to my text message evaporated, replaced by a humid, suffocating fog of victimhood. She stopped typing in all caps. She stopped calling me names. Instead, she began to send voice notes. They arrived in clusters, usually late at night or early in the morning. I sat on my couch, the cease and desist letter from Nadia still fresh in my mind, and played them. Vivian, her voice cracked, breathless and wet with tears. I am so sick. I have not eaten in 2 days. My chest hurts. I do not understand why you are doing this during the holidays. It is Christmas. Vivian, it is Thanksgiving. How can you be so cruel to your own mother when she is lying here in the dark? I listened to the next one. I know I have a temper. You know that. I am sorry you got so upset. I am sorry you took things the wrong way. But you have to stop this legal nonsense. You are scaring Glenn. You are making Trent cry. Just come home. We can fix this without lawyers. I replayed that part. I am sorry you got so upset. It was the classic non-apology of the narcissist. She did not apologize for banning me. She did not apologize for calling me an idiot. She certainly did not apologize for forging my signature on a $15,000 loan or registering a fake charity in my name. She was only sorry that her control mechanism had malfunctioned. She was sorry that the host was finally rejecting the parasite. I didn't reply. Silence was the only weapon she didn't know how to parry. On Tuesday morning, 2 days before Thanksgiving, the scope of the betrayal widened. I was scrolling through a community Facebook page for Fairmont Ridge, a digital bulletin board usually reserved for lost cats and complaints about pothole repair, when a flyer caught my eye. It was a digital image, garishly designed with clip art cornucopias and autumn leaves. Harvest Bridge Outreach, Thanksgiving Gala. Join us for a night of giving, gratitude, and community support. Tuesday, November 25th, at 7 o'clock in the evening. Location, the Briar Hall. My eyes scanned the text. It promised a silent auction, a keynote speech, and a matching grant opportunity, and there, at the bottom, listed under the board of directors, Marlene Brooks, President Vivian Brooks, Finance Director. I felt the blood drain from my face. Finance Director. It wasn't just a title on a filing document in Indiana anymore. She was advertising it. She was using my name, my reputation, and my implied professional competence to vouch for this event. People in this town knew I worked at Larkin Sloan. They knew I was a financial analyst. If my name was on the flyer, it gave the organization a veneer of legitimacy it did not deserve. I grabbed my phone and called Elise. "I need you to come with me tonight," I said. "Where?" Elise asked, her voice wary. "The Briar Hall," I said. "Marlene is hosting a fundraiser, and apparently, I am the finance director." The Briar Hall was a mid-range event space on the edge of town, usually hosting wedding receptions for people on a budget or retirement parties for civil servants. It smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and warming trays. We arrived at 7:15. I wore a heavy coat with the collar turned up and a dark scarf wrapped around my lower face. I felt ridiculous, like a spy in a bad movie, but I couldn't risk being spotted by the door greeters. Elise walked beside me, her posture stiff with anxiety. The room was about half full. There were maybe 50 people sitting at round tables covered in white polyester cloths. I recognized faces immediately. Mrs. Higgins from the bakery, Mr. Henderson, who owned the dry cleaner next to Nadia's office, people from Marlene's church. These were not wealthy philanthropists. These were working-class people, neighbors, the kind of people who would give $50 they couldn't really afford because they believed in the cause. We slipped into the back of the room, standing in the shadows near the service entrance. On the small stage, a banner for Harvest Bridge Outreach was draped over a podium, and there was Marlene. She looked radiant. That was the only word for it. She was wearing a deep red dress I had bought her 3 Christmases ago. Her hair was perfectly coiffed. She was holding a microphone with the ease of a talk show host. "We have been through so much this year," Marlene crooned, her voice trembling with just the right amount of emotion. "But God has been good. He has provided a bridge." The audience murmured their agreement. "I want to thank my team," Marlene continued, wiping a non-existent tear from her eye. "Especially my daughter, Vivian. She could not be here tonight because she is working tirelessly in the city, managing the accounts, making sure every penny you give goes to the families in need. Vivian has sacrificed so much for this mission. She is the rock of this family and the financial brain behind Harvest Bridge." I stood in the dark, my hands clenched into fists in my pockets. The cognitive dissonance was dizzying. 3 days ago, she had banned me. She had called me an idiot. She had threatened to destroy my career. And now, on this stage, I was the rock. I was the saintly, absent daughter working late to save the world. She was using the very success she resented to sell the con. I pulled out my phone. I didn't take a picture. I opened the voice recorder app. "We have an exciting announcement," Marlene said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We have a matching donor. An anonymous benefactor has agreed to match every dollar raised tonight, up to $5,000. So if you give 100, it becomes 200. If you give 500, it becomes 1,000. I stared at the phone screen, watching the waveform of her voice spike. A matching donor. It was a lie. There was no donor. I knew the accounts. I knew the credit report. The donor was likely the $15,000 she had stolen from Granite Harbor Cooperative, which she was now cycling through the charity to make it look like revenue. Or worse, she was just making it up to create urgency. And do not worry about the paperwork, Marlene added with a bright, reassuring smile. You will all receive your tax-deductible receipts in the mail by January, signed by our finance director, Vivian. Tax fraud, wire fraud, solicitation fraud. The room erupted in applause. I watched Mrs. Higgins reach into her purse and pull out a checkbook. I watched Mr. Henderson pull out his wallet. They were buying the story. They were buying the performance. And they were buying it because they trusted the name Brooks, not Marlene's name, but mine. I felt a cold, hard clarity settle over me. The old reflex, the mixture of pride that she was praising me and the dread that I would disappoint her, was gone. In its place was the detached observation of an auditor witnessing a crime in progress. We have to go, Elise whispered, clutching my arm. I cannot watch this. Wait, I said. I need one more thing. I waited until the speech ended and the donation buckets started circulating. Marlene stepped off the stage and was immediately swarmed by well-wishers. I slipped out the side door, dragging Elise with me into the cold night air of the parking lot. Trent was there. He was leaning against the side of his beat-up sedan, smoking a cigarette with a frantic intensity. He looked up as we approached, and the cigarette nearly fell from his mouth. "Viv?" he hissed, looking toward the door as if expecting a SWAT team. "What are you doing here? If she sees you—" "She won't see me," I said, walking right up to him. The smoke smelled acrid in the crisp November air. "Trent, she just promised everyone tax receipts, signed by me." Trent looked down at his shoes. "Yeah, I know." "How do you know?" I asked. "Who is sending them?" He didn't answer. He took a drag of the cigarette, his hand shaking. "Trent," I said, my voice sharp, "who is sending the receipts?" "I am, okay?" he exploded, though he kept his voice to a harsh whisper. "I am sending them. She gave me a template on Word. I just mail-merge the names from the spreadsheet and print them out. I sign your name. It is just a stamp. Viv." She had a stamp made. "A stamp. You are forging tax documents," I said. "That is federal. Trent, that is the IRS. I thought it was real," he pleaded. "She told me the nonprofit was approved. She showed me the paper from Indiana. I thought I was just helping with the admin work. I didn't know the money wasn't going to charity." "Where is the money going, Trent?" I asked. "I don't know," he said miserably. "She takes the cash from the buckets. The checks go into the account at the credit union. Then she writes checks to Foxvale Renovations. She says it is for building costs for the future shelter." "There is no shelter," I said. "There is no building. Foxvale is just a P.O. box." Trent slumped against the car. "I am so screwed. I am so sorry. Viv, I swear, I didn't want to hurt you." I looked at him. He was 29, but he looked like a child who had broken a vase and was waiting for the wooden spoon. He was terrified of her. He had been terrified of her his whole life, but fear was not an excuse for felony fraud. "I know you are sorry," I said quietly, "but you can be sorry and still responsible." He looked up at me, tears tracking through the grime on his face. "What does that mean?" "It means that when the police ask you who signed those receipts, I am going to tell them it was you." I said, "I am not going to protect you from this. Trent, I can't. If I protect you, I go to jail, and I am not going to jail for Marlene's vanity." "She is my mom," he whispered. "She is your accomplice." I said. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the halo of the street lamp, the smoke of his cigarette curling up into the black sky. Wednesday morning was a blur of legal maneuvering. I sat in Nadia's office as she drafted the civil complaint. "We are filing for an injunction," Nadia said, typing furiously, "to freeze the assets of Harvest Bridge Outreach and Foxvale Renovations, and we are filing a motion to compel Marlene to produce the records." "She won't produce them," I said. "She will burn them." "Let her," Nadia said. "Destruction of evidence is another charge. We are building a cage. Vivian, bar by bar." I felt a strange sense of whiplash. 1 minute, I was the competent plaintiff, reviewing legal language about tortious interference and conversion of assets. The next minute, I would look at my phone and see a picture of my mother and me from a trip to the zoo 10 years ago, and I would feel like a scared little girl who just wanted her mom to stop screaming. It was exhausting, inhabiting both realities at once. My phone rang at noon. It was Glenn. My stepfather rarely called me. He was a man of few words. Most of them grunted from behind a newspaper or directed at the television during a football game. He existed in Marlene's orbit as a moon, silent, pulled by her tides, reflecting her light but generating none of his own. "Vivian," he said. His voice wasn't passive today. It was thick with anger. "Hello, Glenn," I said. "You need to stop this," he said. "Your mother is a wreck. She is crying in the bedroom. She says you sent a letter from a lawyer." "I did," I said. "Did you read it?" "I don't need to read it," Glenn snapped. "I know what this is. This is you punishing us. You have always been like this. You think you are better than us because you have money. You think you can just dictate how this family works." "This isn't about punishment, Glenn," I said. "She stole my identity. She took out a loan for $15,000 in my name." "She borrowed it!" Glenn shouted. It was the loudest I had ever heard him. "Families borrow money. Vivian, we are in a hole. She was trying to save the house. She was trying to save us. And you are treating it like a crime." "It is a crime," I said. "Forgery is a crime." "She said you would understand," Glenn said, his voice shaking. "She said you were just mad because we didn't thank you enough for the groceries. Is that it? You want a parade? You want us to kiss your ring?" "I want my name back," I said. "You are destroying this family," Glenn said. "Over paperwork. I hope you are proud of yourself. You are banning yourself. Vivian, we are not doing it. You are doing it." He hung up. I stared at the phone. Marlene had done her work well. She had spun the narrative so completely that Glenn didn't see a fraud. He saw a spoiled, vindictive daughter attacking a struggling mother over paperwork. He believed her reality because living in her reality was the only way to survive living in her house. I needed the documents. I knew there was a box. Marlene kept everything important in a plastic file box she kept under the bed in the guest room. Birth certificates, social security cards, old tax returns. If she had been cultivating this fraud for years, the seeds would be in that box. I couldn't go into the house. If I went inside, she would corner me. She would cry, or scream, or physically block the door. But I needed that box. I drove to the house on Elm Street. It was 3 p.m. The November sun was low and weak, casting long shadows across the lawn that hadn't been raked. I pulled into the driveway but didn't turn off the engine. I texted Glenn. "I am in the driveway. Bring out the box with my personal documents, my birth certificate, my passport, my social security card. If you bring it out, I will leave. If you do not, I will come back with the police to retrieve my property." It was a bluff. The police wouldn't escort me for a birth certificate without a court order. But Glenn didn't know that. Glenn just wanted the noise to stop. The front door opened. Glenn stepped out. He looked older than I remembered. His shoulders were slumped, his flannel shirt untucked. He was holding a clear plastic tote box. He walked to the car window. I rolled it down 3 inches. "Here," he said, shoving the box at the gap. "Take it, and don't come back." I took the box. It was heavy. "Glenn," I said. "Check your own credit report." He sneered at me. "Go to hell, Vivian." As he turned to walk away, I saw movement in the doorway. Marlene. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She was standing behind the screen door, wearing her bathrobe, watching me. Her face was perfectly still. Her eyes were dark holes in the mesh of the screen. She pushed the door open and stepped onto the porch. She didn't look like the woman who had charmed the crowd at the Briar Hall last night. She looked like something ancient and hungry. "You always come back," she said. Her voice was soft, carried on the wind, but it cut through the hum of my engine. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, a law of nature. The satellite always returns to the planet. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had given me life and then billed me for it. "Not this time," I said. I put the car in reverse. I backed out of the driveway, my tires crunching on the gravel. I didn't look back. I drove until I was 3 miles away, in a supermarket parking lot, before I pulled over and vomited into a trash can. I waited until I was back in my apartment, with the deadbolt thrown and the lights on. Before I opened the box, I sat on the floor, legs crossed, and lifted the lid. It smelled like the house: dust, vanilla candles, and stale cigarette smoke. I started sorting. There was my birth certificate, my high school diploma, photos of me as a baby, and then, the other layer. There was a manila folder labeled Vivian, Signatures. I opened it. My breath caught in my throat. It was a practice sheet. Pages and pages of notebook paper covered in Marlene's handwriting. Practicing my signature. Vivian Brooks, Vivian Brooks, Vivian L. Brooks. She had been practicing. The dates on the top of the pages went back 5 years. 5 years. I dug deeper. There was a folder labeled Logins. I opened it. It was a handwritten ledger. Gmail. V. Brooks 88. Pass. Sunshine 123. Lark Sloan Portal. V. Brooks. Pass. Reset every 90 days. Try list of variations. Bank of America. Challenge questions. Q. First pet? A. Buster. Use Fluffy if Buster fails. Q. Mother's maiden name? A. Gallows. She had the answers. She had written them down. She knew my passwords because she had likely reset them herself at some point, or fished them from me during those chaotic visits where she needed help with the Wi-Fi. But the worst thing wasn't the passwords. It was a stack of documents at the bottom. Notarized documents. Power of attorney. I, Vivian Brooks, hereby grant Marlene Brooks full power of attorney. It was signed by me. It was notarized. The date was 2 years ago. I had never signed a power of attorney. I looked at the notary stamp. Linda Crowder, one of the board members of Harvest Bridge Outreach, one of the women from the church, Marlene's friend. Linda had notarized a forged signature. This document gave Marlene the legal right to act as me, to sign contracts, to sell property, to make medical decisions. If I had been in a coma, she could have pulled the plug. If I had owned a house, she could have sold it. This wasn't just theft. This was ownership. She hadn't just stolen $15,000. She had legally annexed my existence. She had built a trapdoor under my life that she could drop me through at any moment. The fraud wasn't sudden, I whispered to the empty room, holding the power of attorney in shaking hands. It was cultivated. I looked at the date again. 2 years ago. That was around the time I got my promotion. That was around the time I started setting boundaries. She had prepared for this. She knew the day would come when I would try to leave, and she had forged the chains to keep me. "You always come back," she had said, because she owned the keys to the door. But she didn't know I had the box. She didn't know I had the map to the dungeon. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the power of attorney. I sent it to Nadia. "She forged a POA," I typed. "Notarized by Linda Crowder," Nadia replied instantly. "That is the nail in the coffin. That is conspiracy. Bring it tomorrow. We are going to the district attorney." I looked at the box. It wasn't a collection of family memories. It was the black box of a crash that had been happening for 33 years, and I had finally found the flight data recorder. I closed the lid. The snap of the plastic latch sounded like a gunshot in the quiet apartment. Thanksgiving was tomorrow. The reset was supposed to happen, but there would be no reset. There would only be a reckoning. Wednesday morning arrived with the heavy, leaden atmosphere of a storm front moving in. The sky over Fairmont Ridge was a flat sheet of slate gray, promising snow that wouldn't stick. In offices all over the city, people were wrapping up emails, setting out-of-office replies, and mentally checking out for the holiday weekend. For me, Thanksgiving was no longer a holiday, it was a deadline. I sat in my apartment, which had been transformed from a home into a command center. My dining table was buried under stacks of paper, bank statements, the police report, the cease and desist letter, and the terrifying power of attorney document I had retrieved from the box. Nadia sat across from me, her laptop open. We were not discussing turkey recipes or travel times. We were discussing the reset. The phrase, Thanksgiving reset, appears in 3 separate texts from your mother to Trent, Nadia said, scrolling through the transcripts I had printed. And she mentioned it to you once on the phone. Everything will be fixed after Thanksgiving. That implies a transaction. Or a cover-up, I said. I was drinking my 3rd cup of black coffee. My hands were vibrating slightly, but my mind felt razor-sharp. She needs money to hit the account by Friday to cover the loan payment for Granite Harbor. If she defaults on the first payment, the scrutiny starts immediately. She needs a bridge. The fundraiser, Nadia said. The matching donor she lied about on stage. There is no donor, I said. She is moving money from one pocket to another, but she needs a source, and if she is desperate enough to forge a power of attorney, she is desperate enough to do something reckless. I picked up my phone. I had one more loose end to tie up with the bank. I dialed Granite Harbor Cooperative again. I didn't get Brenda this time. I got a man named Marcus in the fraud department. Mr. Marcus? I said, my voice steady. This is Vivian Brooks. I filed a police report regarding the fraudulent loan number 88429. I am calling to request preservation of the surveillance footage from the Willow Crossing branch on November 2nd. Ms. Brooks, Marcus said. His tone clipped and professional. We have received your affidavit. The account is frozen. I need the footage, I said. I need to know who walked into your bank and signed my name. I cannot release security footage to a civilian, Marcus said. That is bank policy. However, I can confirm that the footage exists and has been flagged for retention due to the fraud claim. Did you watch it? I asked. I held my breath. There was a pause on the line. A long, heavy silence. I reviewed the transaction log and the corresponding video timestamp, Marcus said carefully. The individual who signed the documents was a female, appearing to be in her 60s, accompanied by a younger male, Marlene and Trent. Thank you, I whispered. That is all I needed to know. Law enforcement can request the file at any time, Marcus added. We will cooperate fully. I hung up. A grim relief washed over me. It was done. The truth existed outside of Marlene's storytelling. It was stored on a hard drive in Indiana. A digital ghost that couldn't be gaslighted, couldn't be guilt-tripped, and couldn't be manipulated. Marlene could cry to the neighbors. She could lie to the church, but she couldn't charm a security camera. My phone buzzed. It was Elise. Vivian, she said. She sounded breathless, as if she had been running. Elise, are you okay? She texted me, Elise said. Marlene, she sent me a text 10 minutes ago. What did it say? I asked, grabbing a pen. She said, if anyone asks questions about the loan or the business, you need to say you were with me when Vivian signed the papers. You need to say Vivian was having a hard time and asked me to handle it for her. I closed my eyes. Subornation of perjury. She was trying to recruit witnesses to a lie that hadn't even been told in court yet. She is trying to implicate you, I said. If you lie for her, you become a co-conspirator. You become liable. I know, Elise said. Her voice broke. I know. I sat there looking at the phone. Vivian, I thought about all the times I covered for her. The time I told our parents she was at the library when she was out with a boy. The time I lent her rent money and told her husband he had paid it. I have spent 40 years smoothing over the edges of her life so she wouldn't cut herself. And now she wants you to jump in front of the knife, I said. I texted her back, Elise said. I waited. The silence stretched out. I said no, Elise whispered. I wrote, I will not lie for you, Marlene, not about this, and then I blocked her number. You blocked her? I asked. Stunned. Elise had never defied Marlene in her life. I had to, Elise said. If I hear her voice, I might crumble. I might do it just to make her stop crying. So I blocked her. And Vivian, I will write the statement. For the lawyer, I will write down what I know. Thank you. Elise, I said. I know how hard that was. It felt like cutting off my own arm, she said. But I realized, if I don't cut it off, the gangrene will kill me. I hung up and looked at Nadia. Elise is in. She is providing a statement. Nadia nodded, typing it into her file. Good. The wall is getting higher. Now we just need to see what Marlene does when she hits it. That evening, the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, the doorbell rang. I froze. My apartment building had a buzzer, but sometimes people tailed residents in. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Trent. He was wearing a hoodie with the hood pulled up, and he was carrying a large, battered duffel bag. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. I opened the door. Trent? He pushed past me into the living room, dropping the bag on the floor with a heavy thud. He looked around wildly, as if expecting Marlene to jump out from behind the curtains. She kicked me out, he said, his voice shaking. Well, she didn't kick me out. She told me to get out for the night because she had work to do and I was distracting her. But then she told me to stay away from you. She said you are unstable. She said you are having a breakdown and I shouldn't listen to anything you say. I am not the one having a breakdown, I said calmly. Sit down. Trent, do you want water? He shook his head. He sat on the edge of my sofa, his knees bouncing nervously. I couldn't sleep, he said. I kept thinking about the tax receipts. I kept thinking about jail, and then she left her laptop open. She went to the store to get more wine, and she left it on the kitchen table. He pointed to the duffel bag. I didn't steal the laptop, he said quickly. I know that is theft, but I had a thumb drive. I copied the folder. What folder? I asked. The one on the desktop, Trent said. It was labeled Thanksgiving Reset. My heart hammered against my ribs. The reset. Show me, I said. Trent reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver USB drive. I took it and plugged it into my laptop. Nadia rolled her chair over so we could both look. The drive popped up. I opened the folder. It was a roadmap of desperation. There were drafts of emails to donors, thanking them for their patience and promising that administrative delays were resolved. There was a spreadsheet of names. The donor list. It included Mrs. Higgins, Mr. Henderson, and dozens of others. Beside each name was a dollar amount. The total was nearly $8,000, but the most damning file was a PDF. It was an application for a new bank account. The account was not for Harvest Bridge Outreach. It was for a new entity called Winter Hearth Community Fund. I scrolled down to the signature line. Vivian Brooks, Executive Director, Marlene Brooks, Secretary. She is pivoting, I whispered. She is not paying anyone back. She is moving the money. Look at the date on the application, Nadia said, pointing to the screen. It was dated for tomorrow, Thanksgiving Day, online submission. She is going to empty the Harvest Bridge account, I said, piecing it together. She knows Harvest Bridge is burned. She knows I found out, so she is creating a new shell, Winter Hearth, and she is going to transfer the funds under the guise of a merger or a grant. She resets the clock. She tells the donors there was a reorganization, and she uses my name again because she thinks I am bluffing. She thinks you will come to dinner, Trent said. She thinks if she gets you in the house, she can guilt you into signing the new papers. She has a whole speech planned. She practiced it in the mirror. She is going to tell you that Winter Hearth is going to honor your legacy. My legacy, I said flatly. My legacy of fraud. She isn't going to stop, is she? Trent asked. He looked small and broken. I thought maybe if I helped her with the receipts, she would be happy and we could just be normal. But she just makes new things. She is an addict, Trent, I said. But her drug isn't heroin. It is control. And money is just the mechanism. I looked at the documents on the screen. This was the smoking gun. This proved intent. It proved that the fraud wasn't a one-time mistake born of desperation. It was a calculated, evolving criminal enterprise. We need to get this to the detective, Nadia said. Tonight, I will take it, I said. Trent, you can stay here on the couch. Do not answer your phone. She is going to kill me, Trent whispered. No, I said. She is going to lose. I met Detective Miller at the station at 10 o'clock at night. The station was quiet. A skeleton crew manning the phones for the pre-holiday rush of domestic disturbances. Miller looked tired. He took the USB drive. He looked at the printouts of the winter hearth application. This is fresh, he said. She hasn't filed this yet? The application is dated for tomorrow, I said. She plans to do the transfer while everyone is eating turkey. Miller nodded. And the Briar Hall money? The cash? Trent says she has it, I said. But there is an after-dinner donation drop planned. She told the donors they could drop off checks at the Briar Hall tomorrow evening. She kept the rental of the hall for 2 days. She is collecting more money tomorrow? Miller asked. Yes, I said. She is milking the cow until it dies. Miller rubbed his face with his hand. Okay, this changes things. We aren't just looking at past fraud. We are looking at an active, ongoing scheme. If she accepts money tomorrow under false pretenses, that is a new count of theft by deception for every check she touches. What are you going to do? I asked. We are going to be at the Briar Hall, Miller said. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. You are going to arrest her? On Thanksgiving? If she commits a crime in front of us, yes, Miller said. Or we might bring her in for questioning regarding the ID theft and the forgery. Either way, Ms. Brooks, this ends tomorrow. I walked out of the station into the biting wind. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. I was handing my mother over to the state. I was criminalizing the woman who had taught me to tie my shoes, the woman who had made my birthday cakes, the woman who had also stolen my future to pay for her present. It was a survival instinct, pure and simple. It was her or me, and for the first time in my life, I was choosing me. Thanksgiving morning broke with a deceptive brightness. The sun was out, glinting off the frost on the cars. I woke up at 7. Trent was still asleep on the couch, wrapped in my spare duvet. My phone buzzed. It was a group text. Marlene, to Aunt Elise, Cousin Sarah, Uncle Bob, Glenn, Trent, Vivian. Good morning, family. The turkeys are in the oven and the house smells like heaven. We are so blessed this year. I am so happy to announce that Vivian will be joining us after all. She called me last night and we had a wonderful talk. She is finally ready to apologize and put this silliness behind us. We eat at 2 o'clock. Love you all. I stared at the screen. She was manufacturing reality. She was stating it as fact, daring me to contradict her in front of the audience. She knew that social pressure was the most powerful force in our family. If I didn't show up now, after she announced I was coming to apologize, I would look like the unstable, grudge-holding monster she painted me to be. She called me last night, a lie. Ready to apologize, a lie. She was betting everything on my shame. She was betting that I would rather swallow my pride and show up than cause a scene in the group chat. I looked at Trent, snoring softly on the couch. I looked at the legal documents on my table. I didn't reply to the group text. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a public fight. Instead, I opened my contacts. I selected the key relatives, Uncle Bob, Cousin Sarah, the ones who might actually give her money. I typed a private message. Happy Thanksgiving. I wanted to let you know privately that I will not be attending dinner today. Marlene's text was incorrect. Also, if anyone receives a request for money, investment, or signatures in my name or under Harvest Bridge Outreach, please do not respond. A legal matter is ongoing regarding identity theft. I am saying this to protect you. I hit send. It wasn't a dramatic reveal. I didn't post the police report. I didn't scream in all caps. It was a protective perimeter. I was putting up a fence around the people who might get hurt and leaving Marlene inside her own fortress of lies. I put the phone down. I went to the kitchen. I didn't have a turkey. I had a roast chicken. I had Brussels sprouts. I had potatoes. I started to cook. It was quiet. The apartment was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the breathing of my brother in the next room. There was no screaming. There was no frantic cleaning. There was no performance of holiday joy. I chopped the vegetables. The rhythm of the knife against the cutting board was steadying. Chop, chop, chop. I realized, standing there in the sunlight, that chaos had been my family's love language. We bonded over crises. We connected through shared trauma. We proved our love by how much we were willing to suffer for each other. Peace felt unfamiliar. It felt thin, like air at a high altitude. I wasn't used to it. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the phone to ring, for the explosion. But the phone stayed silent. The relatives had received my text. They were likely confused, whispering among themselves. But they weren't attacking me. The truth, stating simply and without emotion, had a weight that Marlene's hysterics lacked. I ate lunch with Trent at the small table. We didn't talk much. We ate chicken and potatoes. It was the best Thanksgiving meal I had ever had. Because I had paid for it. I had cooked it, and no one was asking me for a loan between bites. "What happens now?" Trent asked, pushing a potato around his plate. "Now we wait," I said. At 3:00, Nadia called. "Vivian," she said, "I just spoke to Detective Miller. They are setting up near the Briar Hall. Marlene posted on Facebook that she will be there from 4 to 6 to collect last-minute holiday blessings for the fund." "She is going," I said. "She is actually going through with it." "She thinks she has won," Nadia said. "She hasn't heard from you. She thinks your silence in the group chat means you are cowed. She thinks you might even show up to the hall." "Do you think I should go?" I asked. There was a pause. "Legally, you do not need to be there," Nadia said. "You have done your part. You filed the reports. You gave the evidence. But emotionally," Nadia said, "you might need to see it. You might need to see that she isn't all-powerful. You might need to see her face when the reality she manufactured finally breaks against the reality of the law." I looked at Trent. He was washing the dishes. His shoulders slumped. "I have to go," I said. "I will meet you there," Nadia said. "Stay in your car until I get there." I hung up. "Trent," I said, "you stay here. Lock the door." "You are going to the hall?" he asked, eyes wide. "Yes," I said. "She is going to be waiting for you," Trent said. "She has a speech ready for you, too. She told me she was going to forgive you in front of everyone." "She can try," I said. I grabbed my coat. I grabbed my keys. I drove toward the Briar Hall. The streets were empty. Families tucked away inside warm houses, watching football and eating pie. The Briar Hall was lit up like a beacon in the dusk. There were cars in the parking lot. Marlene's sedan was parked right in front. I parked across the street, in the lot of a closed gas station. I saw Nadia's car pull in next to mine. We sat there, watching. People were going in. I saw Mrs. Higgins carrying an envelope. I saw a few others. They were walking into the lion's den, carrying their offerings, believing they were part of something good. And inside, my mother was smiling, shaking hands, and collecting evidence against herself. "Are you ready?" Nadia asked, tapping on my window. I stepped out of the car. The wind was cold. "I am ready," I said. I wasn't walking in as the daughter. I wasn't walking in as the victim. I was walking in as the witness. We crossed the street. The gravel crunched under my boots. I reached the double doors of the Briar Hall. I could hear music inside, a soft, looped track of instrumental hymns. I pushed the doors open. The warmth hit me first, then the smell of potpourri, and then I saw her. Marlene was standing by a table draped in a white cloth. There was a basket on the table, already filled with envelopes. She was holding the hand of an elderly woman I didn't recognize, looking deep into her eyes with an expression of profound, saintly compassion. She looked up. She saw me. For a second, her mask slipped. I saw the flash of calculation, the quick assessment of threat. Then, the mask slammed back into place. She beamed. She opened her arms wide. "Vivian," she cried out, her voice echoing in the hall. "Everyone, look! My daughter is here. The prodigal returns." She started to walk toward me, arms outstretched, ready to engulf me in a hug that would look like love to everyone else and feel like a shackle to me. "Come here, sweetheart," she cooed. "I know you are sorry. It is okay. Mama forgives you." My heart raced, a frantic drum solo against my ribs, but my feet stayed planted. I didn't step forward. I didn't step back. I just watched her come, and then, from the side door, the same door I had escaped through 2 nights ago, the reality arrived. 2 uniformed officers and Detective Miller stepped into the light. Marlene froze. Her arms were still open. Her smile faltered, twitching at the corners. She looked at me. Then she looked at the police. Then she looked back at me. And in that moment, the story she had been writing for 30 years finally ran out of ink. The gravel of my mother's driveway crunched under my tires at exactly 2 in the afternoon. It was Thanksgiving Day, a Thursday that felt less like a holiday and more like a sentencing hearing. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My hands were shaking. They were not shaking from fear of Marlene's screaming or her insults. I had developed a callus for those over 33 years. They were shaking from the terrifying weight of clarity. For the first time in my life, I was not walking and hoping for a mother. I was walking in to confront a defendant. Elise sat in the passenger seat. She looked pale, her hands clasped tightly around her purse as if it contained the nuclear codes. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice thin. "No," I said. "But Nadia is on the phone." I tapped the screen of my phone, which was resting in the cup holder. The call was active, muted, connected to Nadia Park's office line where she was waiting on standby. "Let us go," I said. We stepped out into the cold November air. The house looked deceptively normal. There was a wreath on the door. Smoke curled from the chimney. It was the perfect stage set for the American dream, housing a nightmare of fraudulent financial engineering. I opened the front door. The wall of heat and noise hit me instantly. The smell of roasted turkey, sage stuffing, and pumpkin spice was overwhelming. There were about 15 people in the living room. Uncles, cousins, neighbors. Marlene was in the center of them, holding a glass of white wine. When she saw me, her face lit up with a brightness that was almost blinding. "Vivian!" she cried out. She rushed forward, her arms open wide, the red dress swishing around her legs. She hugged me hard. I stood stiff as a board, my arms at my sides. "I knew you would come," she whispered in my ear, her voice dripping with performative sweetness. "I knew you wouldn't ruin this." She pulled back, keeping her hands on my shoulders, and turned to the room. "Look, everyone," she announced. "The family is complete. Vivian made it." A collective sigh of relief seemed to deflate the room. Uncle Bob smiled and raised his beer. Cousin Sarah waved. I watched their faces and realized something profound and depressing. They did not care about the truth. They did not care about the ban, or the text calling me an idiot, or the fact that I had cut off the bills. They just wanted the tension to go away. They wanted the story to look normal so they could eat their turkey in peace. Harmony, even fake harmony, was the only currency they valued. "Come help me in the kitchen, sweetheart," Marlene said, linking her arm through mine. Just for a second, she dragged me toward the kitchen. As we passed through the hallway, out of earshot of the guests, her grip tightened on my arm. It wasn't a hug anymore. It was a vice. She leaned in close, her breath smelling of wine and mints. "We will do the paperwork after dinner," she hissed. "I have the papers for the new fund on the counter, Winter Hearth. You just need to sign as the director so I can move the money from the other account. Just smile. Vivian, do not make a scene." I looked at her. There it was. The entire holiday. The invitation. The reconciliation. It was all a transaction cost. She had staged this entire production, cooked a 20-pound bird, and invited half the neighborhood just to secure my compliance. She needed a witness to the happy family narrative so that when I signed the fraud documents, it would look like a consensual business decision. "I am not signing anything, Marlene," I said quietly. "We will talk about it later," she said. her smile not wavering for a second as Glenn walked in. "Just get the cranberry sauce." Dinner was a surreal piece of theater. We sat at the long dining table, which had been extended with card tables covered in mismatched tablecloths. I sat between Elise and Trent. Trent was staring at his plate, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. He looked like he was vibrating apart. Marlene sat at the head of the table. She tapped her glass with a spoon. "I want to make a toast," she said. Standing up, the room went quiet. "To family," Marlene said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We have had a hard year, a lot of unexpected challenges, but we have pulled through because we stick together." She looked directly at me. "And I want to give a special thank you to my daughter, Vivian," she said. "Vivian has sacrificed so much for our mission. She's been working behind the scenes to help our outreach expand. She is the reason we are going to be able to help so many people this winter with our new initiative, the Winter Hearth Community Fund." The guests applauded. Uncle Bob nodded at me with approval. "Good girl. Viv," he said. "Always the smart one." I felt the trap closing. She was publicly binding me to the new fraud. If I sat there and smiled, I was accepting the role. I was validating the lie. The Winter Hearth wasn't a charity. It was a getaway car for the money she had stolen through Harvest Bridge. I looked at Trent. He was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. I looked at Elise. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. I pushed my chair back. The scrape of wood against the floor was loud in the sudden silence. I stood up. "Marlene," I said. My voice was steady, lower than usual. "I am not the director of Winter Hearth Community Fund." Marlene's smile froze. "Sit down. Vivian, you are being modest." "I am not being modest," I said. "I am being honest. I did not consent to be on that board, just like I did not consent to be the treasurer of Harvest Bridge Outreach. Just like I did not consent to the $15,000 loan taken out in my name at Granite Harbor Cooperative." The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, and suffocating. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Uncle Bob looked from me to Marlene, confused. "Vivian," Marlene said, her voice dropping to a warning growl. "This is not the time. Do not do this." "This is the only time," I said. "Because you are asking these people, our family, our neighbors, to trust a story that is built on identity theft. You forged my signature. Marlene, you used my social security number. You have been soliciting donations under false pretenses." "That is a lie," Marlene screamed. The explosion was instantaneous. The mask of the saintly mother shattered, revealing the cornered animal underneath. "You ungrateful, jealous little brat. After everything I did for you, I raised you. I put clothes on your back." "You put debt in my name," I said. "There is a difference." "I am trying to help people," she shouted, gesturing wildly with her wineglass. Wine sloshed onto the white tablecloth, a jagged red stain spreading like blood. "I am trying to save this family, and you are stealing donor money. You are the one who handles the accounts. You are trying to frame me because you hate that I am successful." The accusation hung in the air. She was pivoting to the narrative she had threatened in the email to my HR department. She was painting me as the embezzler. "I do not handle the accounts," I said calmly. "I have never had access to the accounts, but the police do, and the bank does." "You are ruining Christmas," Marlene shrieked. "You are ruining children's holidays. There are children waiting for coats from that fund, and you are freezing it out of spite." It was the ultimate emotional blackmail. Use the imaginary children. Use the guilt. No children are harmed by the truth. "Marlene," I said, "adults are responsible for adult choices. You made a choice to commit fraud. I am making a choice to stop covering it up." The line landed hard because it refused the emotional bait. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming back. I was simply naming the physics of the situation. Trent made a sound. It was a choked sob. He stood up so fast his chair tipped over backward. "Trent?" Marlene snapped, her head whipping toward him. "Tell her, Tell her she's crazy. Trent looked at Marlene. He was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering. He looked like a building whose structural supports had finally given way. I sent the receipts, he whispered. Shut up, Trent, Marlene hissed. I sent them, he yelled. I used the stamp. You gave me the stamp with her signature. I didn't know it was fake. I thought it was real. He turned to Marlene, tears streaming down his face. He looked at her with a mixture of horror and heartbreak that I will never forget. Why did you need it to be her? He asked. The question hung there. It was the question I had waited my whole life to hear someone else ask. Why me? Why was I the target? Why was I the resource to be mined? Why, Mom? Trent asked again. Why couldn't you just use your own name? Because she has the credit, Marlene screamed at him. Because she has the job. Because she is the golden child who thinks she is better than us. Who else was I going to use? You? You have nothing. It was the most honest thing she had ever said. She used me because I was usable. She used me because I had built something worth stealing. At that exact moment, two things happened in rapid succession. First, Cousin Sarah's phone pinged with a loud text notification, then Uncle Bob's, then Mrs. Higgins. Sarah looked at her phone. It is a text, she said, confused. From Winter Hearth Community Fund, it says, Urgent Holiday Appeal. Click here to donate now. It was time-stamped right now. The automated system Marlene had set up was firing. She had scheduled the blast to go out during dinner, assuming I would have signed the papers by then to legitimize the account. Second, Elise's phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up. She listened for 1 second. Okay, Elise said. I understand. She put the phone down and looked at Marlene. That was the detective, Elise said. Her voice was trembling but clear. They are at the Briar Hall. They just flagged a transaction attempt using the Square reader registered to you. Marlene, they have a warrant. Marlene's face changed. The rage vanished, replaced instantly by a cold, reptilian calculation. I watched her assess the room. She looked at the guests who were now staring at her with dawning horror. She looked at the red stain on the tablecloth. She looked at the text message on Sarah's phone. She realized she had lost the audience. She grabbed her purse from the sideboard. I have to go check on something, she said. Her voice was brisk, businesslike, as if she hadn't just been screaming about ruined children. There is a misunderstanding at the hall. I need to clear it up. She turned toward the back door. Glenn stood up. My stepfather, the man who had spent 20 years blending into the wallpaper, stepped into her path. Glenn, move, Marlene snapped. Where are you going? Glenn asked. He looked confused, scared, but for the first time, he looked like a man who was realizing he had married a storm. I said move, Marlene pushed him. He didn't move. You used Vivian's name? He asked. For the loan? The one you told me was from your inheritance? It doesn't matter, Marlene shouted. I did it for the house. I did it for you. You lied, Glenn said. He sounded like a child learning a new word. You lied about everything. I am leaving. Marlene tried to shove past him, but the kitchen was crowded. The guests were standing up now, backing away, creating a perimeter of shock. I couldn't watch anymore. The air in the room was too thick, too toxic. I stepped out the sliding glass door onto the back patio. The cold air hit my face like a damp cloth. I took a deep breath, trying to clear the smell of sage and betrayal from my lungs. I picked up my phone. Nadia? I heard, Nadia said. She had been listening the whole time. You did good. Vivian, you held the line. Is it over? I asked. Not yet, Nadia said quietly. Vivian, listen to me. The detective told me something else. Because your name is on the Winter Hearth application, and because you are listed as an officer on the Harvest Bridge filings, the district attorney is going to issue a subpoena for your personal financial records. All of them. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, everything. Why? I asked, feeling a fresh wave of panic. I am the victim. Because your name was used, Nadia said. They have to rule you out as a co-conspirator. It is standard procedure, but it is going to be invasive. Even innocence can be expensive to prove. Vivian. I looked through the glass door into the kitchen. I saw Marlene screaming at Glenn. I saw Trent sitting on the floor, head in his hands. I saw the wreckage of the family I had tried so hard to save. I had won. I had stopped her. But the cost was going to follow me for years. I would be explaining this to background check investigators for the rest of my career. I would be the woman whose mother ran a charity scam. My phone buzzed in my hand. It wasn't Nadia. It was a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you will lose more than Thanksgiving." My stomach dropped. I looked up. I looked through the kitchen window. Marlene had stopped screaming. She was standing still, looking out the window, looking directly at me. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't crying. She was smiling. It was the same smile she had used in the original band text. It was a smile that said she knew something I didn't. It was a smile that suggested the winter hearth and harvest bridge were just the tip of the iceberg, and that by blowing them up, I had triggered something far more dangerous than a bank fraud investigation. In the distance, faint but growing louder, I heard the wail of sirens. They were coming for her. But as I watched her smile behind the glass, safe in the warmth of the house she had mortgaged with lies, I felt a brutal, open-ended uncertainty. Was the threat just her last manipulation? A final attempt to scare me back into submission? Or was it proof that my mother wasn't acting alone? The sirens got louder. Marlene raised her glass to me in a mock toast, and I stood in the cold, realizing that the revenge was complete. But the story was far from over. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a long journey into the dark heart of family secrets, and I hope it resonated with you. I would love to know where you are listening from. Please leave a comment down below with your country or city. It is always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this realistic drama and want to hear more stories about justice, revenge, and the complex dynamics of families, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. I have many more gritty, emotional narratives coming your way. And finally, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Marlene was working with someone else? Or was that final text just one last mind game? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, stay safe and watch your credit report.